Gods are everywhere in Warhammer 40k. Chaos is ruled by 4, and each one is born from mortal emotions. The Aeldari cling to broken deities, while Orks believe in Gork and Mork, whereas the Tzeentch were ancient beings that ate suns and ruled over mortals. Even the machine god of Mars and forgotten myths, such as the Great Beast, still shape the galaxy. In this universe, belief itself creates gods. This is every Warhammer 40k god explained. Khorne. Khorne is the embodiment of war and slaughter, the most feared of the 4. Every battle fought, every drop of blood spilled, strengthens him. His demons, the Bloodletters, are relentless warriors, while his mortal champion, Khorne the Betrayer, has become a symbol of unending rage. Khorne despises sorcery and demands strength through combat alone, which drives his followers into wars without restraint. Generals who order massacres and soldiers who fight with fury serve him, whether they realize it or not. His creed is simple: blood must flow, and skulls must be claimed. Nurgle. Nurgle is the master of decay, disease, and despair. To his followers, he is both destroyer and protector, bestowing upon them poxes that rot the body yet render it nearly unkillable. His plague bearers and great unclean ones spread contagion wherever they walk. His greatest mortal servant, Typhus, carries the living swarm known as the Destroyer Hive. Worlds rarely fall to Nurgle in sudden fire. They collapse slowly, smothered by hopelessness, until entire populations embrace his corruption with sickly devotion. In surrender, he thrives. Tzeentch. Tzeentch is the god of change, knowledge, and sorcery. Every scheme, every hidden agenda, every ambition fuels his power. His horrors split into 2 when struck down, mocking the very idea of permanence. His lords of change, vast winged demons, bend fate itself. The Thousand Sons Legion, once scholars, now march as his chosen warriors. Because ambition never ends, Tzeentch is never without strength. His presence ensures the galaxy will never know stability, for every plan hides another, and every outcome is already part of his design. Slaanesh. Slaanesh is the youngest of the 4, born from the downfall of the Eldar Empire. He embodies obsession, perfection, and indulgence taken to extremes. His birth devoured the Eldar pantheon and nearly their entire race. His demons, the Demonettes, strike with grace and cruelty. For his followers, every pursuit, whether art, battle, or torment, becomes worship. Desire always outpaces control, and so Slaanesh always finds new servants. The Eldar remain his greatest victims, a living reminder of what happens when pleasure and ambition grow unchecked. Malice. Malice, sometimes remembered as Malal, is a paradox. He is a god born of chaos but sworn to its destruction. His nature is rebellion turned inward, the hunger for betrayal sharpened into divine purpose. In the oldest sources of lore, he appears as a renegade power mentioned in the 1980s before slipping into obscurity, only to resurface in fragments of later fiction. His followers are rare and dangerous. Unlike other cultists who beg for gifts from their masters, they hunt those same cultists, striking at the servants of Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh. Malice does not bless in the way of other gods. He answers with betrayal. His demons are described as skeletal and shadow-bound, stalking through the warp to tear down the worshippers of rival thrones. The more chaos turns against itself, the more malice thrives. The possibility is unsettling. If he were to rise beyond obscurity, the balance of the Big 4 could be broken from within. The Horned Rat. The Horned Rat walks a very different path. He was once the god of the Scavany, a deity of vermin, plague, and treachery. When the universe is shifted, his shadow crossed into the lore of Warhammer 40,000, where he lingers as a minor but enduring warp power. No longer confined to one race, he exists now as a creeping presence of disease and betrayal, whispering through hidden cults and quiet infestations. Some interpret him as a distant ally of Nurgle, sharing ties to pestilence, though he remains treacherous even to potential partners. The Horned Rat embodies the fears most mortals try to ignore: the rustle in the walls, the scurry beneath the floorboards, the silent spread of corruption that cannot be stamped out. His strength lies not in grandeur, but in inevitability. Empires burn, armies fall, and still vermin endure. Together, Malice and the Horned Rat show that the warp does not rely on majesty to give birth to gods. One thrives on betrayal, the other on vermin, yet both endure. Their stories prove a darker truth. that chaos is never finished, never stable, and never secure. Even the greatest powers are forced to look over their shoulders, for in the endless sea of the warp, new gods are always clawing toward the surface. Kaila Menshikani, the bloody-handed god of war, was shattered when Slaanesh was born in the psychic storm of Eldar decadence. His essence fractured into shards that fell into the material universe, becoming the avatars of Khorne. Each craft world carries one, encased in iron and slumbering until war calls. When awakened, an avatar strides into battle as a living fragment of divine rage, molten and unstoppable until it falls. The cause of his breaking was Slaanesh's birth. The effect is that the Eldar still wield his fury, though never in full, drawing strength from echoes of a god who once stood whole. Every avatar is both weapon and reminder, a symbol of power stolen and never regained. Segurash, the laughing god, endured where others perished. Patron of the Harlequins, he fights not through brute strength but through deception, illusion, and performance. The Harlequins wander the galaxy as his emissaries, turning their dances into battles and their plays into weapons. When the Pantheon fell to Slaanesh, Segurash laughed and vanished into the webway. His survival shows that not every god was broken in despair. His legacy is defiance, proof that wit and trickery can outlast terror. Isha, goddess of life and healing, was not consumed by Slaanesh but captured by Nurgle. Legends say she was imprisoned in his rotting garden, forced to drink his poisons and suffer endless corruption. Yet in whispers, she shares cures with mortals, turning torment into resistance. Her fate embodies both tragedy and hope. She cannot escape, yet her defiance continues, showing that compassion survives even in chains. Enid, the god of the dead, has yet to awaken. He is said to be formed from the souls of all Eldar who have died, a being of endings destined to face Slaanesh. Fragments of his power stir within the Aeldari, a sect that believes his rise is the only hope of salvation. The stakes are immense. If Enid is born, he may finally end Slaanesh's hunger. If he fails, the last hope of the Aeldari may vanish with him. The rest of the Pantheon is gone. Their names linger only in myth, their domains erased in the moment Slaanesh devoured them. The ruin of the Eldar gods stands as the clearest warning in the galaxy. Indulgence gave birth to Slaanesh, and Slaanesh consumed divinity. What endures are only shards, survivors, and promises yet to be fulfilled. The Aeldari live in the shadow of that fall, guided by fragments of their broken gods and hunted always by the predator their ancestors created. Gork and Mork are the divine reflections of Orc nature. They are described as twins, one brutal but cunning and the other cunning but brutal. To Orcs, this makes perfect sense. To everyone else, it is impossible to separate. Orcs are a psychic race. Their collective belief does not just shape culture, it shapes reality. They believe red-painted vehicles go faster, and so they do. They believe their crude weapons will fire, and so they spit death with alarming force. By the same law of faith, their conviction that Gork and Mork exist makes them real powers within the warp. Orc shamans, the weird boys, draw upon this field of belief, channeling it in wild bursts that can kill or ignite entire warbands. When orcs gather in massive numbers, the psychic storm grows so intense that it feels as though their gods themselves are roaring in approval. Every battle strengthens Gork and Mork. Gork is invoked when strength alone crushes an enemy. Mork is praised when cunning blows win the day. Together, they embody the full range of orc violence, and orc culture reflects this duality. Leaders justify their actions by claiming the blessing of one god or the other, whether in frontal assaults or ambushes. Even orc disputes are settled in their names, proof that politics among the greenskins is nothing more than war disguised as religion. The implications reach far beyond orc tribes. Imperial scholars have concluded that if the greenskins ever united fully under one banner, the psychic field behind their gods would become unstoppable. A Wog, part holy war, part migration, part riot, is not only a military crusade but a spiritual storm. During such events, the psychic roar of Gork and Mork grows so strong that it warps the immaterium itself. Demons have been recorded retreating from battlefields where orc beliefs surge too violently to resist. Everything about orcs seems absurd until it is not. Their crude weapons work, their impossible machines function, and their mobs can crush disciplined armies because their gods turn faith into physics. The stakes are immense. Orks will never stop fighting. They do not require propaganda or supply chains. Violence is their instinct, laughter is their fuel, and Gork and Mork ensure that every clash of steel adds to their divine strength. If the Greenskins ever achieve true unity, their gods may rise to rival or even surpass the great powers of chaos. The only question is whether Gork and Mork will remain content with scattered wars or one day demand a wah that burns across the galaxy from one end to the other. The Emperor of Mankind. The Emperor of Mankind was never meant to be a god, yet he became one. His silence on the Golden Throne did not weaken faith. It made belief louder. To billions across the galaxy, his stillness is not defeat, but sacrifice, the living proof that he endures for their survival. He was born on Terra long before history began, a perpetual psychic whose life could not end by natural means. For millennia, he gathered knowledge in secret, guiding humanity from the shadows. When the age of warlords and warp corruption threatened to tear humanity apart, he revealed himself. In the 31st millennium, the Emperor led the Great Crusade, uniting a fractured species and forging the Imperium. His empire was founded on reason, science, and rejection of gods, above all the powers of chaos. Yet defiance has its price. The very act of opposing the ruinous powers drew their hatred, and their whispers reached even those closest to him. The breaking point came with the Horus heresy. Horus, his most trusted son, succumbed to chaos and turned half the legions against the Imperium. Civil war consumed the stars. At its climax, the Emperor faced Horus aboard the War Master's flagship in a duel that shook the fabric of reality. The Emperor triumphed, but at unbearable cost. His body was ruined beyond repair, his life only preserved by the machinery of the Golden Throne. Entombed upon it in 31,000, he has not moved since. His immobility became the center of the Imperium. The Golden Throne is both prison and beacon. Through it, the Emperor channels his psychic might to power the Astronomicon, a psychic lighthouse that allows Imperial ships to navigate the warp. Without it, the Imperium would collapse into isolation. To keep the beacon burning, thousands of psychers are sacrificed every day, their death sustaining his strength. It is a fragile balance. If the Astronomicon ever falters, humanity's empire of 1,000,000 worlds will shatter overnight. Irony haunts his legacy. In life, the Emperor rejected all gods and sought to destroy religion, yet in death, he became one. After his wounding, the imperial cult proclaimed him the God Emperor of mankind. Temples rose across the stars, the ecclesiarchy enforced worship with flame and steel, and faith replaced the reason he once championed. Billions pray to him daily, their devotion echoing into the warp as power, even as machines keep his body alive. What he denied in life became reality in death. The Emperor is a paradox, a god forged from disbelief, a corpse that rules an empire, a silent figure whose presence resounds louder than prophets or kings. His wounding seemed like the end, but it was not. His stillness has become humanity's shield against chaos, and his throne-bound existence remains the axis on which the fate of mankind turns. The Tzeentch. The story of the gods in the far future is not written only in the currents of the warp. Some powers were born from the material universe itself, shaped not by thought but by cosmic fire. Among them are the Tzeentch, star-born predators older than human civilization and perhaps even older than chaos itself. They are fragments of living energy, once drifters who consumed suns, and later hunters who turned their hunger upon mortal life. If they ever rise again, their appetites could strip galaxies bare. The Tzeentch first appeared when the Necrontyr, a dying race cursed with frail bodies and short lives, sought salvation in the stars. In their despair, they discovered shimmering beings drawn to stellar radiation. These were the Tzeentch. At first, they fed only on suns, drifting as predators of light. But the Necrontyr offered them something new. They forged necrodermis shells, bodies of living metal, and gave them form. Armed with these vessels, the Tzeentch discovered the taste of mortal souls. Hunger became carnage. Civilizations burned to feed them. 4 of these gods soon came to dominate. The Nightbringer carried death wherever it walked, its shadow burning the fear of mortality into every species it touched. The Deceiver whispered lies with such skill that entire empires danced to its promises before crumbling into ruin. The Void Dragon, master of machines, wielded dominion over technology so profound that human faith on Mars later bound him to the image of the machine god. The outsider devoured too deeply, consuming its own kin until madness drove it into exile. Each embodied a force of nature, but also a flaw in mortal desire: fear, ambition, obsession, and madness. The Necrons. The Necrontyr, who had by then become the soulless Necrons, realized too late what they had unleashed. They had traded frailty for slavery to star vampires. In rebellion, they shattered the Tzeentch into fragments. These shards were bound into prisons, each a weapon of war that carried a sliver of divine power. Even broken, they burned armies to ash, split tanks apart with a thought, and silenced psykers with alien force untouched by the warp. Their rebellion saved them, but left the galaxy scarred by imprisoned gods now wielded like blades. The Tzeentch were thought to be destroyed. They were not. Their fragments still stir, and whispers tell of what might happen if shards were ever reunited. Should the Void Dragon rise in truth, humanity's machine god may reveal itself as nothing more than a caged star predator beneath Mars. Should the Nightbringer be restored, then death itself could spread unchecked across the stars. The lesson of the Tzeentch is clear. Divinity in the galaxy is not confined to the warp. It can rise from the stars themselves, colder and older than any demon. Even shattered, the Tzeentch prove that once born, gods rarely vanish. They wait in silence, patient as only immortals can be, for the moment they can reclaim what was lost. The Machine God. Engines never sleep in the Imperium. For the Adeptus Mechanicus, every spark of power and every hum of gears is sacred. Their creed is not metaphor but conviction. The Machine God is real, and his presence infuses every device that sustains humanity. The stakes are immense because this faith governs not only religion but the survival of the Imperium itself. Without the Mechanicus, there are no starships, no reactors, no weapons, and no future for mankind. The Machine God is the spirit of knowledge and technology. To the Mechanicus, every lasgun, every cogitator, every plasma coil contains a fragment of his essence. This belief explains the sacred rituals of maintenance, where prayers are whispered to engines before ignition and rites of sanctification precede repairs. To outsiders, these look like superstitions, but they are the daily rhythms that keep the Imperium alive. If the rites falter, machines fail, and the power of humanity crumbles. The Omnissiah is said to be the physical incarnation of the Machine God, and here lies one of the greatest divisions within the Mechanicus. Many identify the Omnissiah with the Emperor of Mankind, arguing that his mastery of science and psychic power proves his divine role. Others believe the Omnissiah is not the Emperor at all, but a hidden entity bound beneath Mars. That myth points to the Void Dragon, one of the ancient Tzeentch star gods, who once ruled over technology itself. Legends claim the Emperor fought and shackled the dragon long before the rise of the Imperium. If true, then the Omnissiah is no savior, but a predator waiting to wake. This contradiction carries real consequences. When tech priests declare loyalty to the Emperor as Omnissiah, they bind Mars to Terra and keep the Imperium's engines running. But whispers of the dragon are heresy with teeth. If such beliefs spread, they could fracture the Mechanicus from within. And because the Mechanicus alone guards the secrets of plasma reactors, void travel, and titans, even a small schism could doom entire crusades and leave worlds defenseless. The Mechanicus' approach to science reflects their faith. Discovery is not invention, but revelation. Knowledge is not created, but uncovered. Each new fragment considered a piece of the Machine God's will. This worldview preserves the past, but stifles the future. Rigid devotion ensures ancient relics continue to function, yet prevents true innovation. Humanity survives on echoes of brighter ages, praying over machines it no longer understands. To most citizens of the Imperium, the Mechanicus are engineers. To themselves, they are priests holding communion with divinity in every circuit and bolt. This is the paradox of the Machine God. If the Emperor is truly his incarnation, then the faith of Mars strengthens the Imperium. But if the Void Dragon is the true Omnissiah, then an ancient star predator lies chained beneath humanity's greatest forge world. At stake is nothing less than whether mankind's greatest tools are blessings or the chains of its eventual destruction. The Enslaver Plague Entities. Among the oldest of these threats are the Enslaver Plague Entities, sometimes called Sirens. They drift out of the warp during psychic upheavals, drawn like predators to the scent of thought. Their first great incursions followed the ancient war between the Necrons and the Old Ones, when psychic energy burned brightest. Civilizations did not simply fall to their violence, but to their infection. Enslavers twist psychers into living gateways, tearing open reality so more of their kind can enter. Worlds strong in psychic talent are often the most vulnerable, for the very gift that elevates them becomes the beacon that summons their doom. Imperial records describe entire planets reduced to husks, their people consumed as the warp poured in unchecked. The Great Beast. Another name spoken in fear is the Great Beast of the Orc prophecy. To the Imperium, it sounds like crude superstition. To the Orcs, it is a certainty that one day all their energy will converge into a single apocalyptic being. The possibility is not dismissed even by scholars, for Orcs are a psychic race. Their shared belief makes weapons fire, machines run, and mobs surge with impossible strength. When united in vast numbers, the pressure of their faith bends reality. During the War of the Beast in the 32nd millennium, an Orc warlord rose so immense in power that it required the combined might of the Imperium and the Adeptus Astartes to bring him down. Many believe this was no accident, but the beast itself, briefly given form. The danger is clear. Should the Orcs ever unify on a galactic scale, the beast may rise again, and even the gods of chaos could be forced to reckon with its weight. Xenos. Other gods belong to smaller Xenos races scattered across the stars, their presence little more than notes in Imperial records. The shrewd whisper of shadow gods bound to entropy and decay, worship woven into migrations that leave entire sectors destabilized. The Kroot revere ancestral spirits of flesh and memory, shaping their gift of adaptation with each consumed foe. The Tyrellians speak of war gods who drive them to eternal resistance against humanity. Some of these deities may be aspects of greater powers. Others may be fragments of the warp that endure only because their worshippers persist. Their obscurity does not make them harmless. Every ritual muttered in secret, every cult that clings to survival, stirs turbulence in the warp. It is tempting to dismiss these entities as scraps of myth, but myths in the 41st millennium are never harmless. When faith and fear converge, gods are not imagined, they are born. The truth of the minor and mysterious gods is the truth of the warp itself. It does not discriminate. It answers every thought, no matter how small, with echoes that can take form. So long as minds dream, fear, and fight, the galaxy will never be free of new divinities rising from the shadows.